Welcome into the your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by our delicious friends at Parlor Pizza. Thank you to everything that Parlor Pizza does for the good of this world. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by not Sean Smith, but Spencer Smith of Synergy Sports and absolute basketball savant in all of the greatest ways. How are you, Spencer?
Yeah, I'm all right, Jack. I've been better. Coming off the weekend and all that. We got another opportunity tomorrow night. But besides that, I'm good. Things in life are okay.
It's always just, we can always just go to fantasy land and be like, oh, like real life is. But unfortunately, this is like our jobs and my job, especially to talk and dig in. I can't just disconnect after just a pretty terrible showing down in Tuscaloosa. It's like all my friends, like when the game ends, they can just be like, boop, turn it off and just like disconnect and go to their own worlds. And I'm like, no, I got to still write and talk and just dig into this. And it's just sometimes very annoying, but hey, there are worse jobs in the world. I'm never going to complain about watching basketball for a living. It's a very blessed life, but it doesn't make it easy when the product is what it is that we saw down in Tuscaloosa, Spencer, an 89-74 defeat. I was very optimistic going into the game. I was very wrong. I texted you leading up to the game, like, man, I just have that feeling. Something is telling me that all of the things that we have been hoping and dreaming and praying about this team, that's all going to finally come true to start SEC play. And I am stupid. It did not go well, Spencer.
No, it didn't, honestly. And it's the way, this has been the frequent theme of the year. It's not so much the losses, but it's the way that the losses are unfolding that's so disheartening. It was, again, another first half performance that was just completely not at all to the level of like what's acceptable for this program. And it goes way beyond the starting lineup to me. If we can dive into that if you want. Like, I know everybody's frustrated about Jaland Lowe not starting, rightfully so. He should be starting. But it was even after Jaland Lowe got in. It was the entire first half performance. We can't give up 50 points to anybody. I understand Alabama is one of the best offensive teams in the country. We can't give up 50 points and a half to anybody. And somebody can fact check me on this. I think it was the worst, or I'm sorry, like the most points we had given up in the first half to a team in, I don't know, 30 years or something crazy like that.
Oh, good. I like that stat. That's just awesome.
Yeah, it's like we wanted to break records this year and we're doing it in all the wrong ways. It's just like, it's not an enjoyable experience to get down 21 points again. We're 12 minutes into the game, already down 21 points. And then to see for the third straight Power 5 game, the second half, we outplayed the other team. I think we outscored Bama by 1 or 2 points in the second half. Obviously we outscored St. John's and Indiana by 9. It's like, why can't we put together a full 40 minutes? So again, it's not even just the fact that we're losing. It's the way that we're losing. It's the same trends over and over again that aren't getting fixed. And, we're 14, 15 games into this thing, and it's well past the point of it being acceptable at this point in my mind.
And I think that's the biggest frustration is they had so much time for just an install to a total reset of, like whatever the Camp Cal equivalent is, where it's you get the 2-a-days, you get no classes, nothing to distract the players, but like nothing but the absolute basketball junkies, the junkiest junkies, bringing out the best of them over this stretch. And they still go into that game just feeling so underprepared, and the execution and the game plan. And we'll talk obviously about the scout, because that was a big talking point today with Diabate. But it just felt like on paper you had the tools and the pieces to put together a winning formula down in Tuscaloosa, playing to your strengths and their weaknesses, them being one of the worst defensive teams in Power 4 basketball, the rebounding woes, the recent shooting success on Kentucky's end, while also saying like, hey, if you can just stay within arm's reach, don't let them go absolutely nuclear. Let them, they'll make shots. You're going to lose that battle, but if you can just stay at a distance, some of the other stuff is probably going to work out in your favor. And there's an opportunity, there's a window there. You're not favored there for a reason, but there's a window there if they do X, Y, and Z, and they go in and it's just playing all the way to Alabama's strengths. And then you lose the rebounding battle. Then you can't even score against a horrific defense. It was like, well, okay, then what the hell have we been doing? That was my biggest frustration.
Yeah, it was attention to detail, which we'll get into in a minute with the scouting report. That was my biggest frustration, was the attention to detail. And then you're right. We were texting before the game, and you had confidence. I had some confidence too. I said, hey, we need to hold Bama to, I think I told you, between 9 and 10 threes. We can hold Bama to 9 or 10 threes. They're averaging 13 a game. We can hold them to 9 or 10. That's pretty good. And if we can make 5 or 6, and if we win the battle on the boards, I think we'll win the game. Instead, they're averaging 13 a game. We let them get 15. Instead of us getting 5 or 6, we only get 4. So instead of losing the 3-point battle by maybe 4 or 5 3-pointers, we lost it by 11 3-pointers, which is insane. And then we lost the battle on the glass. And this is the thing. When you're missing a lot of shots and you're not forcing a lot of misses, you're probably going to lose the battle on the glass, especially for Bama when their misses, because they were shooting from deep so long, it's long shot, long rebound. So those rebounds are coming off long. And we didn't do a good job. Time after time, our guys ran to the rim. Shot went up from Phylon or from whoever, our guys would run to the rim for the rebound. And you can't do that when they're shooting the ball from deep. If it's a long shot, it's going to be a long rebound. So you got to go and you got to hold, in that 10 to 12 foot range, and you got to go get it. Guards have to rebound down. We didn't do any of that. Guys ran to the rim. Guards were leaking. Otega always leaking down the court, trying to get a fast break rather than rebound. It's the little stuff that goes a long way, and that's how you get out rebounded by a not very good rebounding team in Alabama. You gave up a lot of open threes that you should not have, which was just lack of attention to detail. So again, it all just goes back to the theme. It's how we're losing the game. You're right. I went into this with some optimism. I said, this is a game that I actually think we can get. And with 10 minutes to go in the first half, I knew this game's probably over, which is just unbelievable for Kentucky.
And I think the most damning part of all of it was you have your 2 best players on paper, the guys that we heard all summer that like, hey, it's 1A, 1B. These are your two co-stars until JQ is ready. They played like it. Obviously, some defensive slip-ups, the engagement, the intention, and some of the nitpicky things. But in general, like that's what you sign up for with the Jaland Lowe. That's what you sign up for in Otega Owe, who really kind of seems to be rounding into form as the All-SEC, both of them being All-SEC guys. That's what we signed up for. Their full strength with Jayden playing as many minutes as he did. Like all of the excuses that we kind of had built in up to this point, they all kind of went by the wayside in this one. And then it's like, okay, well, where does the hope come from? Where does the optimism come from that obviously this team is good enough to beat the Mizzous of the world, the Mississippi States of the world, go down the list of that middle pack, but the fans will argue we didn't pay for them. We didn't pay for anything, but we as a program didn't pay for middle of the pack SEC. $22 million should be getting you the best of the best of the best in winning all of these games and being a surefire Final Four, or at least like one of the in the conversation nationally. Like we're the fact that we're even begging for like, well, maybe we can, if things work out the right way, we'll finish as a top 20 team. We'll finish as, let's finish the season ranked. It's like, well, that's not Kentucky basketball anymore. Like we got to keep the standard, especially when you hype it up to be what it is all offseason. I'm just as guilty as anybody for being part of that hype machine. But this was outside of just general chemistry that comes with continuity and availability and all those things with time. This was kind of the first, why this does look like the exact same issues that we saw against Michigan State. This does look like the same issues we saw against Gonzaga. Is there a fix for them to be what we kind of hoped and dreamed they'd be, Spencer?
Yeah, I just think, yeah, there is. There's always, we've seen all sorts of crazy things. We've seen a really bad UConn team in 2014 go and win the national title. They were awful up through the beginning of February, and like, so absolutely, like anything is possible. We've seen that this team can play at an elite level, scoring 53 points in the second half against a very, very good defensive St. John's team. That was elite basketball that we were playing. What we did defensively against Indiana from them behind the arc, and then what we showed in the second half on the glass and all that, that's elite basketball. Even the second half against Alabama, we went on runs where we trailed by 21 at one point. We cut it, all the way down to 8, I think, in the second half.
9, yeah.
9. So, to that point in that 20-minute stretch of basketball, we outplayed Alabama by about 12 points. we've shown that we're capable of that. The problem is that we're just not consistently doing it. And early in the Alabama game, we blow some coverages. Colin Chandler does whatever the hell Colin Chandler was doing for the first 5-7 minutes of the game. They hit 3, 4, 5 threes. And what happened? The same story that happened against Michigan State. We start to feel sorry for ourselves. We start to say, here we go again. We let that impact the rest of our defense. We're missing shots on offense, and we let that impact our rebounding. We let that impact our effort on the glass and in transition. And then we start to get lazy on ball screen coverages, and then they hit another 3, and then we start to feel more sorry for ourselves. It's the same theme of this team not playing to the level that it's capable of playing because of things that are totally within our control. It's within our control to not go under the ball screen 3 times in a row. It's within our control for Malachi or for JQ or for anybody to not instinctively slip into a drop coverage when we're clearly not supposed to be in a drop coverage. We're clearly supposed to either hedge or flat those ball screens to make sure that somebody doesn't get a clean look. But we're so worried about the guards turning the corner, or we're not, I don't want to say lazy, but we're so like whatever, lackadaisical with our coverages because we're feeling sorry for ourselves that we instinctively just drop back off of the ball screen and we give up another open 3. These are things that are completely fixable for a team that is dialed in. Preseason, Jack, I had us losing this game. There's no fault at this point in losing at Alabama. Alabama is an elite program. There is nothing wrong with going down to Tuscaloosa, putting up a really, really good fight, giving them hell, and you drop it by a couple points. We're never going to be happy with that result, but I'm not going to ever flame a team for that. The effort and the execution that we saw on Saturday is what you should absolutely roast a basketball team for. And so much of it is just outside of is within our control. Alabama, talent-wise, on paper, is not 21 points better than us in 10 minutes. But that's the effort that we put, and that's the execution, and that's the attention to detail and everything like that. So to answer your first question, is it fixable? Yeah. Somebody in the comments asked, are we cooked? No. But is the temperature in the oven getting warmer and warmer? 100%. It is getting warmer, and it's frustrating to watch.
So I wanted to do this in chronological order, going from game, post-game press conference, Pope and Oats, then transition to Colin's show Monday night to today's media with Mo and Jaland. But I feel like it is so timely with what Mo said that I feel like we kind of just have to address it as it relates to the game, especially. Man, I have not heard a player cook his own team or his coaches. However, I'll ask your opinion, what you think he meant by a lot of this. But whoa, boy, Mo Diabate had some stuff to say about this matchup. And obviously it was a homecoming reunion for him down in Tuscaloosa. Again, it was interesting watching, kind of him walk into the gym for the first time, rained booze all over him. He goes through the layup line, and you could kind of tell he's amped up. You could definitely tell that the nerves have gotten to him, or the moment's pretty big. He's missing some layups and some dunks. So very uncharacteristic most stuff, at least in layup lines. And just never translates to anything for him specifically, but you can tell he's frustrated. We see some of the chippiness with him and, getting into it with Jaland and just some moments. It was just a very interesting dynamic for Mo specifically. And then when he opens up about it today, a lot of scouting report talk, and you as our former director of scouting, I am fascinated to get your take on this and what you think he means by it. Run through a couple of these quotes. Actually, I think Steven has them pulled up, or at least one of them.
I do.
So yeah, let's just listen and watch.
It was just the attention to details. I feel like we could have emphasized that a lot more in the scout, and some of the plays that they were doing, or some of the off-end movements, the peel to a flare. I feel like we could have studied it a little more and emphasized it more. And I think that would have been a major difference in the game. The most frustrating part was seeing that we could have did better at the scouting report, because it felt like they was doing the same thing over and over, and just thinking like we could have did a lot better, on the defensive side, with with the attention to detail and the personnels, we should have took it more seriously.
Okay. Attention to detail, taking it more seriously. Is that accountability for teammates, or was that a coaching knock, or both?
I don't know, Jack. It kind of sounds like a little bit of both. I don't know. I'm obviously not in the room or whatever, but it's never good when you have guys that are pointing to the scout itself being the issue. It might not be the coaches. A couple of those quotes make me think he's talking about them as a team. Like, hey, we should have paid more attention to that, and that should have been more important to us as players. There were a couple comments though that made it sound like he's talking about this, like just the way that the scout was prepared in general. He had a quote in there about their like peel screens into flares. We got beat on that like 4 times in the first half. It was so frustrating, to the point that I was screaming at the TV, like, what are we doing? How do we keep losing our man on that? How are we not communicating on the flare? It seemed like we were unprepared for that action, and that's an action that they run a lot. It's hard to say if the coaches went over that, if that was part of the scout, part of the film, and the team just didn't sync and they didn't take it seriously. But it's never a good sign when guys are talking about the scout. When I was in South Florida, we were obsessive preparers because Brian Gregory is a disciple of Tom Izzo and Judd Heathcote and everything. He's like an obsessive preparer, to the point where if you had interviewed any of our guys at any point, they would have said, I'm sick of talking about the scout. I'm sick of it. Like, the coaches are overloading us with too much info about the scout. That was our problem, is that we probably did a little bit too much of it. If you've got a player saying, hey, I don't think that we evaluated this stuff properly, it's just not a good sign. And again, I don't want to put it all on the coaches, because sometimes coaches are preaching the right stuff and the players aren't absorbing it, and they're not doing what they're supposed to. They're not paying attention in film. I'm not saying that's the case either. I don't know, but it is odd that he talks so much about this today. It does raise a little bit of a red flag for me. Yeah.
And it's also like, what else is the scout for this team? Like, Alabama they are so proudly them in their identity and their focus. And yes, they're creative and they're a tough scout, but it's not like they're looking to shock you in any way. Like, they are going to be unapologetically them every single time they step on the floor. And they're like, hey, we're looking to score 140 points. Stop us. So it's more of the, like, what exactly were you in? If you listen to what Pope had to say during his call-in show about going over screens, under screens, and saying that there were no design unders, and kind of, I don't know, because it also kind of throws the players under the bus for the lack of execution, but said it kind of held himself accountable and said, we obviously weren't going under any screens in this one because duh. But there was just the messaging was very, very bizarre with all of this. But like that's the, like, how were there so many wide open looks outside of just, hey, it's a dynamite offense, that's what they do. They're better at what they do than anybody else does. But it did just feel like, man, a lack of preparation that it feels very inexcusable just from an onlooker.
Yeah, I'll give my take on it. This is just my opinion. Obviously, I have no sources, even though the sources say I have no sources on this. My opinion is that there is probably, in my opinion, no way that the staff was not prepared for what we saw on Saturday. Just as a little bit of background on how most teams do scouting, an assistant takes a scout and they will prepare for that scout 3 or 4 games out. So basically, what was 3 or 4 games ago? After the Indiana game, we have 4 assistants. So after the Indiana game, whatever assistant coach did the Indiana scout, maybe Cody Feger, as an example, after the IU game, his entire attention for the next however long will be geared towards Alabama. That Indiana game was on December 13th. So let's just say Cody Feger has a scout. He's been working on Alabama since December 13th. And the head coach doesn't look at anything regarding Alabama until after the previous game is done. So as soon as the final horn goes off for Bellarmine, Pope will go up to his office and he'll have a packet and a scouting report and all the film ready for him. He'll walk in and sit down at his desk, and everything for the scouting report will be ready for him. Now, normally that's only 2, 3, 4 days for a head coach to prepare for an opponent. Pope had 2 weeks. Pope, his reputation is that he's an obsessive preparer. Jack, I'm just being honest. I just don't see how this staff wasn't prepared for what we saw on Saturday. So to me, that seems like it would be a player issue where they weren't absorbing the information that was on the scout. Or maybe, to be fair, in practice, maybe the coaches were emphasizing coverages on the wrong actions. And like they were like, oh, this peel flare action is really easy to defend. We'll go over it on day 1 and 2, and then we'll move on to other stuff because that's easy for us to defend. And so then they got into more complicated stuff and they didn't spend the time. But I just don't see how the staff wasn't prepared for what we saw on Saturday. So for me, that's my opinion as somebody who used to do this for a living. But again, I'm not in the room, so it's hard for me to say.
I think this may align close enough. I think, Steven, if you want to play the Jaland Lowe quote about just kind of preparing and being ready for certain opponents, I think that might tell a little bit more about a player versus coach.
Halfway through, like we still have a long way to go to figure things out. Does that give you all any confidence and optimism, things like that?
I mean, I know for some guys it might. They look ahead on the schedule and see how many games you have left, but I know some guys who are just, they focus on one game at a time and they do anything to win that next game. And as far as me, I can only look for one game at a time. Just the way that I'm trying to stay healthy and everything. So I think everybody's trying to get on the same page about, like, let's not look too far. Like, we've got to do what's right in front of us.
Getting on the same page, looking too far ahead, thinking multiple games down the road versus one game at a time. Obviously, you'd be an absolute moron on this team if you weren't obsessing over Alabama, but just the general, scatterbrainness of this team and the engagement issues and some of the things with the focus and that we're seeing in the games kind of leads me to believe that it's slightly more player, but I'm not convinced there wasn't a little bit of frustration. Maybe like, was it with Mo about like, hey, why didn't they lean on me more heavily about like, hey, I know what a day-to-day game prep looks like under Nate Oats. Let me walk you through what they're going through right now. Like, what did it kind of felt maybe like you should have leaned on me more heavily. He talked about like, I wanted to take the game over and things like that, versus maybe just the general lack of engagement with this team right now.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that we had a guy from Alabama who probably, I doubt that Nate Oats switched all of his play calls and stuff like that. Even within play calls, there's like actions usually that you have like keywords for, right? So like we used to call backdoors Roger, right? Because you don't want to have the team run down the court and say, hey, Jackson, backdoor this one, backdoor this. Like you don't want to say that because then everybody knows what's coming. You would, we'd say, hey, Jackson, Roger it. And the other team doesn't know what we're talking about, but for us, that means backdoor, right? A Charlie was a Sam, a handoff was a hanky, so on and so forth. Alabama's probably got some calls like that too. So in my opinion, going into it, I was like, Mo's going to help us a ton with this because Nate Oats is going to be saying something along the lines of like Roger, right? And Mo Diabate can communicate and say, hey, they're going to backdoor, or something. Maybe there were some feelings about that type of stuff, but it's really frustrating that the mistakes that we're making just seem to be from either lack of preparation, maybe by the players or by the staff, in my opinion, probably the players, and just lack of effort. I'd rather make mistakes where guys are selling out on 3-pointers and like biting for pump fakes and flying into the stands. But I'm running so fast trying to get this guy off the line, right? Like I'd rather mistakes like that happen rather than what we did, which was just kind of, I hope he misses it,
Pray.
Right.
You'll never have to worry about preparation with our friends at Parlor Pizza. Make Parlor your game day destination, from award-winning pizzas like the Doctor or fan favorite hot honey pepperoni to Parlor's famous house smoked wings and extensive craft beer selection. Parlor has a menu that will please the whole family. Their location on Harrodsburg Road is just a short drive from Rupp Arena. Don't miss out on their great happy hour. Come in Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. to enjoy discounted pints, cocktails, and starters. Parlor is looking forward to celebrating 2 new locations this year, coming soon to Lexington out at Hamburg and Richmond, Kentucky. Transitioning a little bit into the post game and kind of the weirdness with that, where Pope is always pissy after these losses. Like, we have learned he's a terrible loser, doesn't know how to handle it well. I have hated how short these press conferences are. Having the player sitting next to the coach is a weird setup, and just it's all funky. All of it has been very, very funky, especially in losses. But we did get 18 minutes from Nate Oats, and of those 18 minutes, like 17 minutes and 36 seconds of it were dunking on either Kentucky in general or Mark Pope as a coach, or something that they did infinitely better than that Kentucky does, or the winning tradition that Nate Oats has led at Alabama compared to the records of Kentucky during that same time span. All of the above. Just it felt like a constant alley-oop layup line dunk session at the NBA All-Star game with Nate Oats just constantly throwing one down, one after the other. One of the specific talking points that I want to get your take on, Spencer, was about the ball movement and how he went out of his way to say, like, hey, something that really jumped out at us on film, anybody with eyes notices that the ball sticks. This team does not pass very well, especially when Jaland is not on the floor. And kind of it reminds me a lot of that 2022-2023 season where when you had Xavier Wheeler and Oscar Tshiebwe, it was either Xavier dribbling the air out of the basketball, or it was Oscar Tshiebwe duck in, get the ball down low to Oscar Tshiebwe, and then everybody falls asleep on the perimeter because that ball is absolutely, positively never coming out back out again. So similar vibe to that, where he noticed that the ball sticks just in general, but when the bigs get the ball inside, that they are not looking to pass. They are 100% looking to score, and he instructed his guys, hey, go attack, go muck things up and force a bad shot or a turnover, and try to get something out and transition the other direction. And it felt in real time like, whoa, that's a pretty significant shot at Kentucky about just what they noticed, point blank period, about the team's passing struggles. But then the Collins show Monday night, where Pope kind of pushed back on that dynamic and saying that is kind of a rudimentary way of thinking, that it's not just about the counting stats with the assists, but we count so much more. And I'll get your general take on it while I find the exact quote. But just a fascinating dynamic of kind of the mind games that Oats seem to be playing about just calling it as it is, and Pope's response despite this being his fourth consecutive loss and none of them being particularly close.
Yeah, it hurts. Yeah, it was interesting. You don't see press conferences like what Nate Oats did all that often, where they're just really frank and apparent, and definitely it seemed to fire shots across the bow is how I took it. You don't really see that a ton. You usually want to give a ton of credit to your opponent and make your win look better. Like, yeah, they're a tough team. They do a lot of stuff really well, and we were just able to get the better of them today. Like, Oats didn't do any of that. He said they're not good because of these reasons, and that's why we were able to beat them by so much. And yeah, calling back to his successes in recent years and stuff. It personally, as a fan of somebody whose team just got beat by a lot of points, it rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't care for it, but I'm a fan. But I didn't get to listen to Pope's Collins show, but I did get to read, kind of the transcript or whatever. And he did seem to push back on it. I understand maybe a little bit what he was saying, because like there are teams that have low assist rates on certain things, but maybe it's not like that doesn't tell the whole story. It's, hey, we're actually moving the ball really well. We're just not a great shooting team. And so those assists don't show up anywhere because they're not assists. They're leading to missed shots, or something like that. That's not the case with us. It's not like we're getting great looks and we're just missing them. We're not even generating great looks right now. And I think you're right. Anybody that's watching the games can see that Jaland Lowe is the only one that's producing any sort of looks for anybody else. He's the only one intentionally driving, looking to spray the ball out. And I really thought Aberdeen would be that guy. I thought Aberdeen would be somebody who would be able to put his head down, get around the corner on guys, get 2 feet in the paint, kick it out for shooters. We've tried Colin at different points at the point guard, and he wasn't great at it, and Jasper's not really getting any run. So yeah, it's hard to say I disagree with a lot of what Nate Oats said, because the ball sticks. And yeah, we don't To be fair, he did call out like, hey, we don't throw it out of the post a lot. Pope's right. We do not throw the ball into the post very often. We don't look to get it down there. We run stuff. We run rip screens and high lows and stuff to try to generate looks, but we don't even really look to toss it down there a ton. So that's just lack of faith from the guards and like what's going to happen if they toss it down there, which is not good. So now we have a floor that's imbalanced. So I do agree with Pope on that point, is that we're just not getting it down low enough for us to then generate kickouts from the bigs. And you got to be able to draw double teams down there, and you got to make moves, put pressure on the rim and stuff. And we're not doing any of that because we're not getting the ball inside. So I agree with both of them to a point. But a lot of what Nate Oats said is really on the nose for how this team's been executing.
And I think part of the next step of this is what Mo said in response to that. Like, I asked, like, hey, what's your take on your former coach basically saying that you specifically, obviously it was extended to a lot of guys, but when Mo gets the ball down low, he's not particularly looking to pass out of it either. He's looking to score and then probably do one of these numbers. So play that one real quick, Steven.
What did you think of it, knowing that was your former coach, kind of giving general front feedback for you guys?
That's just the kind of guy he is. He's just, he's super intelligent when it comes to like knowing basketball, and he does his research a lot. Probably one of like better than a lot of people in the country. Like that's what he does. But I didn't know that, honestly. I was kind of surprised hearing that and everything. But I think him saying that allowed us to see what we could work on better from the post scoring and all of the options from there.
So that kind of makes me lean the other direction about the player versus coach in terms of the scouting and the preparation and things like that, because it's like, man, he's stressing about just how impressive the game prep is, and man, like he's one of the smartest dudes in the game. There are very few that are better in the world at what Nate Oats does, and if he's saying this about me, then hey, I'm glad to learn something. It's just a very total tone shift from what the rest of his little media opportunity look like. So does that change your mind at all? Just, I guess, just in terms of the messaging, just, it does feel like how important is that to you, that you get the weird AI stuff and that Pope brought up in his call-in show about the stories and the fables and all the just craziness. It just kind of feels like Pope in general with PR is drowning a little bit. How important is that to you in the midst of these ongoing Kentucky struggles as we kind of decide whether or not they're going to get the ship righted?
I mean, it's important because, like, this is, you're putting a face on the program, so like when Mo goes out there, when Jaland goes out there, that's the face of the program for the next 20 or 30 minutes or however long they're doing their media avail, and then Pope in his call-in shows, an hour, he's putting the face on the program, and he's it's his chance to communicate. And what you want consistent messaging when stuff is not going right. You want what the coach is saying to echo, you want what the players are saying to echo what the coach is saying, and maybe some vice versa. Because you just want them to be on the same page with, this is what needs to get fixed. This is where we're not good enough. Pope sometimes, and again, I have a lot of respect for Pope. In my first episode on this, I talked about how we got to play against him when he was at Utah Valley and stuff. I have a lot of respect for Pope. I think he's a great basketball mind. I think there's a lot of really positive stuff there. But sometimes his messaging lately has been a bit lost in the sauce, for lack of a better term. It's not really landed with, maybe the messaging that needs to be put out there. And then when you've got players saying maybe slightly different stuff than what coaches are saying, or you've got Jalen Lowe sounding a little bit different than Mo, who's sounding a bit different than Ortega and stuff like that. Like, it just seems a little bit disconnected. And I'm not saying that they are disconnected, but I'm just saying, like, there should be a clear message right now in that locker room for, this is what's wrong and this is what we need to go out and fix. And if that's top of mind for everybody, then when they get in front of the media, that's what they're going to talk about. And maybe right now it feels like there's a lot of things wrong. And so it's hard to stay focused on just 2 or 3 kind of key points or whatever. But that's my biggest takeaway, is that there's still like such different messaging when you hear different guys talk and when you hear the head coach talk, that it tells me they haven't, as a team and as a collective group, said these are the things that we need to fix, and we're all on the same page with fixing them, because everybody seems to be talking about different things that need to be fixed. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway.
I'll say, actually, let me knock out this real quick, because I think Jaland gave a positively revealing quote that if there's, because I've been too negative, like just the whole thing. Like I feel like we hit rock bottom as a program, lost the games that we lost. We know exactly what we are. Once we got past kind of the like, all right, we're not going to be a 1 seed. Now let's kind of figure out what the next steps look like. Like now it's about kind of picking up those pieces and seeing what exactly that looks like. And I think Jaland gave a very insightful quote in that regard. But before that, our friends at Monticello Bank, who are excited to partner with them, as always, enjoy the home court advantage with Monticello Bank's HELOC special and use the equity you built in your home to finance special home projects and improvements. Score big with a fantastic introductory rate and attractive closing costs. With 21 locations in 15 counties across Kentucky, we're just around the corner. So hurry in and speak with one of our mortgage lenders about this limited time offer today. Find us on the web at mbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Jaland kind of just talked about how the lack of not only just game reps, but also practice reps with all of these guys together, that there's just kind of a vulnerability with it of like, I don't know these dudes right now. Like I don't know where Jayden likes to be, or where, Mo talking about where Jaland likes to be. Like just go down the list of all of the kind of the mixing and matching and the lack of continuity that comes with it. That yes, they have in general had lots of pieces overall, and they've been able to have the 5-on-5 and no issues in that regard. But in terms of the guys, as we're clearly trimming this down to an 8 or 9 or whatever it's going to end up looking like, the main core, the 5 that you're going to see on the floor when March Madness starts, they have played essentially no time together whatsoever. And there's just kind of like a sense of like, hey, we're trying. Like this chemistry stuff is harder than people kind of give you credit for when you haven't done there, when you haven't been there and done that with me next to this brother versus that brother next to him. Like we just haven't seen the pieces all come together. So how important is that to you, that if we are talking about a breakthrough and how quickly it's able to happen, is it just like there is some Rick Pitino to all of this, that he said after the St. John's game, like, hey, dummies, give it some time, while also acknowledging that you don't have that much time.
Yeah. It's funny. I have a quote at the top of my Twitter page. Not that most people have ever been to my Twitter page, but it's pinned at the top because my old head coach, Lon Kruger, used to say it, Hall of Famer and all that. He used to say, we have plenty of time, but we don't have any time to waste. Right. It's like, it's never too late. Like we have plenty of time to do the things that we need to do on a daily basis. And as a team and as a group, we have plenty of time, but we don't have any time to waste. Like we have to get to it right now. And I think that that's the position that this team is in, where it's like, we have time to fix the things that we need to fix, but we don't have any time to waste. Like we have to get to it. And part of that is playing the guys that you think you're going to have to be leaning on and getting the lineups and building that chemistry. And I think we saw there was maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes played of, I think a lot of people's preferred lineup of Lowe, Owe, Cam, Mo, and JQ. And I think we only saw 1 or 2 minutes of that. Cam, obviously, his minutes were all out of whack. And I don't know the reason. I'm assuming the staff had a reason. I know
not a good enough one, in my opinion.
I know his comment about playing a bigger lineup. I didn't know what he was meaning with that. I didn't know what he meant by that. But in my opinion, there's no reason to not play Cam at this point, 30 minutes a game. He's arguably our best shooter. He's on a hot streak right now. He's one of our better defenders, especially the analytics say he's one of the better defenders in the country. He's our leader in plus minus. A lot of things to like about Cam by his numbers and by his capabilities and stuff. And he was really inconsistently played throughout the Alabama game, which didn't make a ton of sense. So I think you need to start building continuity with your lineups, and you need to start really leaning into roles and stuff. And now JQ's been in the mix for 3 games now. It's time for him to start fleshing out his role, and it's time to have some go-to sets where we're getting the ball to JQ in the post, and we're doing stuff that, that generate him looks. And we didn't see a lot of that against Alabama. It's time to do some of that stuff so that we should hopefully make the NCAA tournament. And you're playing in a first or second round game, you've got something to lean on, and you've got a lineup that you feel really good about putting on the court for 28, 30 minutes, or whatever. And the Alabama game, we seem to get away from a lot of that, which was really frustrating to see. And obviously the question about like, well, where's Cam, and why didn't JQ play with this guy or whatever? Like, there's just too many questions like that.
Yeah. And I guess that opens the door to just the conversation of, there is a winnable stretch here. Like if you just want to be as optimistic as possible, it's that, yes, there's probably not a worse matchup in the SEC than Alabama. Nate Oats has Pope's number. Go down the list. Like, we can acknowledge what all that is, while also acknowledging that this upcoming stretch, Kentucky can rattle off 6 straight wins, and we can kind of sort of feel, maybe not feel perfect about it, but start seeing the chemistry and the continuity and all the things that we had talked about also in the form of wins, because this team just hasn't been able to stack wins consistently all season long. And how much of it is like seeing that first free throw fall, the first 3 fall, just kind of like, hey, I need to see it to know what sustained success looks like against actual competition, not, Middle Tennessee State. So what do you need to see going into tomorrow, obviously, but what is the level of optimism going into this upcoming stretch where you hopefully, all things considered, you can't afford any losses in this especially this week? You got to win this little pod, but in general, what can you accomplish by stacking some wins here?
Yeah, you can get a lot of momentum. And we're going to find out a lot about this team the next stretch. I think 5 of our next 6 games, we should be favored. Home against Missouri, home against Mississippi State, at LSU. I think we're favored in all 3 of those. At Tennessee, we're not going to be favored. But then you come back and you're home against Texas, and you're home against Ole Miss.
Yep.
And Travis Perry. So 5 of the next 6, you should be favored. And we're going to learn a lot about the team on if this is kind of an upper SEC team. If you win all 5 of those and you win 4 out of the 5 by double digits, I'm coming away feeling a lot better about this team, because I'm like, okay, we've clearly solidified ourselves as an upper echelon SEC team, and a team that's going to compete to finish in that top 4. And if our only drop is at Tennessee, and look, we haven't lost in Knoxville since when? 2021, I think.
It's been a minute. Yeah. It's been a minute.
We haven't lost in Knoxville in a long time.
22? Maybe
was it 22? That first Oscar team? Yeah, maybe that might.
No, they won that one too. Maybe it was at 20.
I think even the horrible COVID.
They lost there in 2022 with
February 15th, 2022, 76-63.
Okay, 76. Okay, so 2022. So and I think we had stacked up a win or 2 before that, because I think I remember the bad COVID team going down there and winning. But, so who knows what happens on Rocky Top, because we've just had some weird success there in recent years. But out of the next 6 games, you should be favored in 5 of them. And I want to, like, if you come away in 4 of those 5 wins, winning by double figures, and you're winning on the glass, and you're getting back to the defensive performances like you saw against Indiana and St. John's and North Carolina, and we're not getting the defensive performance like we saw against Bellarmine and Alabama, I'll feel a lot better about where we're at. Because then at that point, maybe we'd be 5-2 in the SEC, probably in the top 5 in the league at that point, going into a tough stretch against Vandy and Arkansas and Tennessee and Florida and stuff. So you're going into a harder stretch in the back part of January and earlier February, but now you've got some momentum, and now you feel good. And you feel like, hey, we flushed out a little bit of an identity for ourselves in the last 5 or 6 games, where we feel like we have a lot we can lean on, and we've got momentum. And we've seen the ball go through the hoop and stuff like that. And so you're going into that road game against Vandy, and you're like, we can do this, guys. Like, let's do exactly what we've been doing for the last 3 weeks. But if we go out there and drop a couple of these games, or we're barely winning a couple of them and stuff like that, that'll make me really, really worried at that point about our ability to turn this thing around. But it's a big stretch. It's a big stretch of winnable games.
Well, while we're on that note, our friends at BetMGM don't quite have the spread, but some of the, Ken Palm had it at double digits. So there's an avenue for even a feel-good win potentially tomorrow. How important would that be to not only just get it done, but also kind of get your first, not just kind of a ugly, sloppy first half and then storming back in the second half to, a full complimentary 40-minute complete performance where you win by 20 points, something of that nature.
Yeah, that would be huge. It'd be big for us because we need to stack wins to where we feel like we're not on this roller coaster up and down thing like we feel like we've been on since the Gonzaga game. Before the Gonzaga game was just all downhill. And then since post Gonzaga, we feel like we've been on kind of this up and down. UNC was super winnable, but we lost it. And then we come back and, stack a couple wins. And then the last two games we haven't played very well. We need to stack that in order to really start to feel good and for guys to feel like, okay, we're settling into what we do. And honestly, yeah, Missouri is a very winnable game. They're coming off of a big win against Florida, though. They just beat Florida by 2 at home in the SEC opener. That comes on the heels of
I kind of like that. I kind of like that.
I like it too. And Florida, I think, is putting it on Georgia right now by like 20 points. So that's not a bad Florida team. But that came on the heels of them losing. They lost to Illinois by like 100 points. And our old friend Orlando Antigua and Big Z that are on that team, they beat Mizzou by like 100 points. So it's been an up and down year for Mizzou as well. That's looking to stack wins and find consistency. So they're coming into Rupp feeling like, well, we got to do the same thing that Kentucky's feeling like they have to do. So do I think it's going to be a double-digit win? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know what to expect, but we need to play well, and we need to come out of it feeling good and feeling like we're building on something.
Well, speaking of the devil, our very good friends at BetMGM, 12.5 is our opening spread with BetMGM, Spencer, with the over-under set at 151.5. And while you gather your thoughts on what you think of that and whether or not they cover, just make sure if you haven't signed up with our friends at BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and you will get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to a $1,500 in bonus bets. If your bet loses, just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college basketball season one for the history books. Make it legendary with our friends at BetMGM. 12.5. How are we feeling about it?
That's a lot. And honestly, I'm surprised. The analytics still like the Cats to a point, so I think that's probably playing into it. Mizzou, I think, has only broken 76 points once against a Power 5 team this year. I think they put up 83 on Minnesota, and then they just scored 76 on Florida. Besides that, they've been somewhere in the 60s, or against Illinois, they scored 48. So it's not a high-powered offense like what you saw against Alabama. Mizzou, looking at their numbers earlier, they give up a lot of threes. They give up a lot of open threes. You'd say, oh, maybe that's a good thing for us. Maybe it could be a bad thing if we're not making them, because they could give up a lot of threes, and if we don't make them, then it's just transition probably from Mizzou. 12.5 is a lot. Again, the analytics still to a point like the Cats. I think ESPN Predictor put it at like an 81% chance for the Cats to win it or something like that.
And Ken Palm has it at 80 as well.
80, yeah. So I'm going to knock on wood as I say this. It should be a win. I think double-digit win is definitely in play. I just want to come out of it seeing some trends that I like. I want to see us getting back on the glass. I want to see us playing the right lineups. I want to see us covering ball screens the right way. I want to see our transition defense not be impacted because we missed a shot. That's the kind of stuff that I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, I do want to just kind of lay it out there, though, that as we're talking about the 80% and the 12.5 point spread and all that fun stuff with Mizzou, like losing that one could be pretty detrimental. Like, I mean, we are kind of at a fork in the road of this season where you don't have a tournament resume right now, at least one that you can feel pretty darn comfortable at. You have 2 quad ones, 2 and 5 in quad one games. And the team's going to make the tournament, but there is kind of a path where things could get real funky and uncomfortable if you let it. And this stretch will decide it, because this is a stretch of 6 games that you could see yourself winning all of them, or as you said, favored in 5 of the 6 at minimum. So ESPN dropped to a 9 seed today, taking on the Utah State. Pope returning to old stomping grounds in Utah at least, in the 8-9 battle against Utah State. Definitely not something I envisioned in the slightest going in, but that's where we are, a 9 seed right now. Are you at all concerned about that possibility?
No, I'm not going to let my mind enter into that space. I'm going to stay in my safe space of everything's fine and we're not at risk of missing the tournament. I mean, we've got a long way to go. We've played a very hard schedule. And it's a schedule that we went into the year thinking we were going to win a lot of these games, and we haven't, I still think that we're an upper echelon team in the SEC. Like, I think Indiana and St. John's are better than 70% of the SEC, for instance. They're definitely top half of the SEC. And so our performances against them make me feel a little bit better about our chances. But yeah, you can't drop any of the next 3. I think if you definitely can't drop the next 2, because they're in Rupp. We should never lose in Rupp. Going on the road, I think that LSU team is better than people think, but I think that's still definitely a winnable game, and a game we might even be favored on the road. You've got to dig in. You've got to find a way to win the next 3. And then you go into Rocky Top with a 3-game win streak. You've won 6 of your last 7, including 5 games against Power 5 opponents: St. John's, IU, Mizzou, Mississippi State, LSU. So you go into that game on Rocky Top and you're like, okay, we've won 5 of our last 6 against power opponents. We've got something building here. Like, let's go take it to the Vols. The Vols are not as good as they've been in recent years. Maybe we can win that game. And then you're really cooking, So there's a lot still in front of this team. But at some point we have to decide as a group that we say, hey, this stuff that's been plaguing us all year, our effort, right, our missed shots impacting our defense, us feeling sorry for ourselves because they hit some tough shots, whatever the case is, that has to stop. And we have to say, hey, we're pros. We're being paid like pros. Like, we are a talented group. Like, we need to really lean into what we're great at, and we need to take hold of some of these games. And we just need to do that. We just need to decide as a group that that's what we're going to do. And so it's all in front of us. We just got to get it done.
LSU actually projected to be favored in that one. 78-76, giving Kentucky, KenPom giving Kentucky a 44% chance to pull that one off. So not a gimme, but I feel like you got to win that one, right?
Yeah, I think so. Here's the thing with KenPom. KenPom has not quite figured out. I don't want to take it back to this, but KenPom has not figured out how to correctly factor in injuries to the metrics and stuff throughout the year. They have kind of a roundabout way of doing it, but not really. So like, our metrics they don't account for, like, JQ at that point will be three more games into this thing. And where's he at 3 games from now, and stuff like that. Lowe will be another few games into being healthy and hopefully in the starting rotation. And how does that impact things or whatever? So I'm a little bit surprised that KenPom would have us as a dog in that game, but I guess the team maybe deserves it at this point with how we've been playing.
Big question. Will we be seeing one Jaland Lowe starting at point guard for Kentucky tomorrow night? Because for the first time, Pope kind of seems to be changing his tune ever so slightly about Jaland. I think, I don't want to say bullying works, but you get what I'm saying. It just feels like the more and more conversation has led to all right, damn it. Yeah, fine. Okay. Yeah, we'll start the guy who needs to start. I get it. I understand it. It was a bad, but we're making progress finally. Do you think it happens, and what difference does that make once the ball is tipped tomorrow night at Rupp Arena?
Yeah, I think it happens. I'm pretty confident that Jalen Lowe will be starting on Wednesday. I definitely think it has a factor. Like, Pope's point about going into this game when he talked about the starting lineup or whatever, he's like, well, we started strong. It was just and yeah, we did. We started up 5-0, which was good. But it was still that first team in that first segment that then gave up that 5-point lead and let Alabama go on a 9-0 run. And then
we're talking seconds. Like, we're talking 50 seconds of that 5-0. So I really hated the verbiage of, well, the first 2.5 minutes, the first 3 minutes was actually written. No, the first 58 seconds were fantastic. And then it was a 9-0 run.
Yeah. If you're going into the first media timeout trailing at any point, and if you've already led by 5 points and now you're down by 4 in the first media timeout, like, we clearly lost our juice after the first couple possessions. I think Jalen Lowe would have helped that, right? Instead of being down 9-5, maybe because we started 5-0, maybe we're up 9-5. Maybe Alabama's trimmed the lead down a bit, but we're still holding on to that lead if Jalen Lowe is in there or something, right? Just start your best players. That's my advice. Just start your best players. It just seems like going back to the Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd year, it's like we just had this problem where we just don't want to start our best players for some reason. Just start your best players. I do feel very confident. I think Jalen Lowe is going to start on Wednesday, and I think he'll be in that slot for the rest of the year, which is good. Maybe at some point we'll see JQ slide into there and stuff as well. I don't think JQ will start, but I do think Jalen Lowe will, and we'll see how that impacts the beginning of the game.
Who is the best five? That is, I think, is it that Cam Williams lineup with the other four that we've kind of addressed?
I think so. It's the lineup that I would lean on right now. And now, your best lineup can change as the year goes on. If somebody comes along or somebody starts to trail off and miss shots or whatever, like at the beginning of the year, I think any of my best lineups would have included Colin because he was making shots at the beginning of the year. Now he's not. Now Cam Williams is on a heater, and Cam Williams is a great defender and stuff. My best five is Jalen Lowe, Otega at the 2, Cam at the 3, Mo at the 4, and JQ at the 5. But Malachi's been really good. Malachi's been good for us. So you got to work Malachi in there. You got to work Aberdeen in there, hopefully just not at the point guard spot. I'd like to see Jasper get a little bit more run and let him really kind of get his feet wet in the game and start to get comfortable within the flow of a game. And then maybe he can make something happen. But I just think that's the lineup you kind of got to run with at this point.
How do you juggle the need to, you got to shrink it at some point and tighten things up, and like we talked about, the inconsistency with Cam's minutes individually kind of just felt like the big picture frustration that fans have right now is like there's no rhyme or reason for him to play 6 in the first half and then 0 for the first 10 minutes of the second and then play the rest of the stretch and be part of that unit that helps cut the lead down to 9, first time single digits since the first half. And the same thing with St. John's. Just like I feel like in order to do that, Pope has to have fewer options to look at when he turns toward the bench. How do you juggle that, and who are the odd men out? Not who you think is going to happen, but who you believe should be included in the rotation versus cut?
It's hard. It's hard because I have differing opinions on this a little bit. Where I was on staff with Coach Kruger, and I think his philosophy to a point was in the first half, I want to throw several different bodies out there because you just never know who's going to have it in any particular game. Like, who would have thought that in the Elite Eight game going into playing Michigan back in 2014, that Marcus Lee of all people would be the same point. You just
Dominique
never.
Hawkins out there.
Dominique Hawkins making the plays that he made. There was a game. It might have been a home game against Tennessee where Derek Willis just went nuts, and he wasn't like a huge part of the rotation at the point. Last year, Trent Noah gets a shot against Tennessee on the road, and he makes a couple big three. You just never know when a guy's going to have it. So Coach Kruger was big on in the first half, I'm going to try to get everybody a few minutes, and I'm like, you better prove to me in those couple minutes that you deserve to keep playing the rest of the game. And if I see a couple things that I don't like, you're out and you're probably not going to play again. Now, there was a little bit more rope for guys like Buddy Hield and things like that who are going to be out there and stuff. But for those bench guys in slots 7, 8, and 9, it's like the Hunger Games. You guys got to get out there and prove it to me. So I am a little bit of a fan of, like, you just never know when somebody's going to have it. And you put them out there and you see what they've got. And who knows, they might turn the game around. I think back to the 2015 national title game with Duke, and it was Grayson Allen. People don't remember he didn't play a lot on that team, but Coach K threw him out there and he just made 3, 4, 5 plays in a row that you're like, holy cow. And he probably won him a national championship with that. You just never know when a guy's going to have a performance like that, but you can't really test it until you put him on the court. So I am a little bit of a fan of, like, in the first half, you have a slightly bigger rotation where it's like, okay, I'm going to put you out there and you got to show me what you got in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Otherwise you're out. Second half, by that point, you should really have your rotation dialed in. I'm like, hey, these are the 7 or 8 guys that have brought it today. These are the ones we got to lean on. And so I'm going to ride them all the way home. And so Cam only getting 6 minutes at the very end of the first half and then not playing for the first 10 minutes. It's like we never really gave Cam like a real chance early in the flow of the game before the game was already a 20-point game to, like, get into the mix. So, like, that's the kind of stuff that I don't like. It just seems like we keep talking about this lineup, non-continuity, and it just seems to continue to be a problem. So my first half rotation would be a little bit wider, and I'd play a couple more guys to just see who's got it that day and see who's giving me something. On the flip side, Brandon Garrison might not give you something, and you're like, he's out. Like we're pulling him from the rotation today. But then in the second half, I just think you got to dial it into like 8 tops, and I think it's got to be that 5 that we just talked about, and then some combination of 3 more. So I think in that 3, it's got to be Malachi. I think it's got to be Denzel, and then I think the 8th spot as of right now is maybe Colin. But I'd have no problem. Like Colin didn't bring it against Alabama. If he gives us a couple minutes against Missouri and he's making a couple of the same mistakes, you're out. And we're going to give those minutes to Jasper. I just think we got to be a little bit more judicious with what we do, especially in the second half with these lineups so that we can start to build continuity.
Do you care? We'll start wrapping up. Do you care at all about kind of the imaging of all this, the what it means like with Jasper in his recruiting pull and the 5 stars watching what's happening with Jasper and seeing that this is not going well with the Jasper experience is not going well. Does that impact at all what Pope should do for this season while also acknowledging kind of the big picture recruiting struggles that he very clearly has right now?
No, I don't think you can factor it in because what we as Kentucky fans, we saw that get factored in for way too long. We saw Shea come off the bench because he was a 4-star and not a 5-star. Quade Green was the 5-star. We've seen lineups under Cal where it's like, why are we doing this? Well, we know why we're doing it. It's because he's the 5-star, and like clearly we want it to look good for recruiting or whatever. And it was to the detriment of what we were doing on the floor. Every decision you make has to be what can help us win this basketball game tonight. And if that's Jasper, fantastic. I like Jasper a lot. I think he's going to end up being a really good player. I think he could be fun. I would like to see him get a little bit more run at times because I think he could give us more than what he's giving us right now. But clearly at times he seems overwhelmed. But I don't think you can factor recruiting into it because you just have to do what it takes to win the game in front of you. And if there's a kid on the bench who deserves to be playing more than the 5-star, then that's how it should be.
It's tough though. Like I get it, man, because especially I think for Jayden, especially as the golden ticket lottery guy, as hey, the Jayden experience has to go well for the next generation of if that is truly what Pope wants to do. I also think that Pope is in a sense in a little bit of an identity crisis in terms of player evaluation and how he's recruiting the portal, how he's recruiting high school guys, and not necessarily going for what works for his system and the guys that fit his personality and his culture, and feeling the need to be pulled in so many different directions about, Kentucky, being at Kentucky means that I got to recruit number 1 picks, even though I've never coached one. So I don't know what that looks like. Am I able to do that? We don't know. And taking Jasper was kind of the first sign of, well, does he truly fit what you're trying to accomplish? Like, is he a Mark Pope player? And I like Jasper. Like, I think that he's a good player, and this is not currently working in terms of Kentucky and playing for Mark Pope, but I believe in him as a basketball player. But I also am concerned that he was so focused on getting that short-term hit of landing the 5-star, getting the Lexington kid, keeping him home, more so than going for a Braylon Mullins, a guy that we obviously knew loved Kentucky and loved Mark Pope, and Pope loved Braylon, and there was a very clear connection there. But once they made the move for the PR win with Jasper, that Braylon said, yeah, never mind, I'm going to play for Hurley. So I do just kind of think that Pope this offseason is going to be very important, as we're still seeing him kind of in scramble mode for 2026 and what that looks like, whether he hits on a couple reclass kids or if he even recruits high school at all. I think he just needs to take a look in the mirror and take a step back and say, what am I trying to accomplish with recruiting? Do I care about high school recruiting? Are we going to bring in the Colin Chandlers of the world and have them all be slow burns? Or can I recruit a best of the best, Tyron Stokes, Christian Collins, go down the list? I think that's going to be really, really important for him going into year 3 to just figure out what this looks like exactly. Also knowing that there's a lot of guys on this roster that can potentially come back with remaining eligibility. So that options are pretty limited.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And then you look at what Braylon Mullins is doing with UConn. I know he's been hurt a little bit and stuff, but I think he's averaging right at double figures and, shooting upper 30s and from three. And he's a big 6'6" and, all that kind of stuff. He seems like a guy that Mark Pope could really use right now. Right. So it happens. There are hits and there are misses and stuff, but you have to recognize those and you got to deal with the PR as it comes. And, we've seen a million freshmen that have not panned out their freshman year, and they've gone on to be great basketball players as sophomores and juniors and so on and so forth. And I think that's Jasper's road. He's not a one and done guy, but he's a guy that come junior, senior, he could be a really, really cool, fun player. So I hope he sticks around and all that. I know it's early for that conversation, but I still think in the moment, in the vacuum of a single game or in a single season, you got to do what's best for that particular game. But again, I'd like to see Jasper get more run. I think as he gets his feet wet in a game and as he settles more into the rhythm of a game, he gets a little bit more comfortable, and then we start to see the fun part of Jasper come out, which is creating and generating looks and all that type of stuff. So we'll see as the year progresses.
Closing remarks, anything you need to get off your chest going into again, I feel like we've said must win 7 times this season, but a very, very important game at Rupp Arena tomorrow night against Dennis Gates and the Tigers.
Yeah, we got to win it. I think this episode has probably come across as a little bit more negative than maybe I wanted to be coming in. I'm not trying to be really negative. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can fix that's really fixable. And I think this could end up still being like a group that puts a run together. Is it going to be a national championship? No, I mean, it's not. But can this still turn into a group that we're really proud of at the end of the year? And we say, wow, look at how far we've come. I think that's in front of us. So I don't want this to come across like we're just being incredibly negative, because I don't want to be that. The product that we saw on the court on Saturday, there was only negative to talk about, but I still think that there's a lot in front of us. And I know there's a lot of negativity with the team and with Pope and stuff right now. And my advice would be to hang in there and support these guys. And let's see where we're at in a couple months. And then we can give it the full autopsy. But in the meantime, let's support these guys and let's make sure Rupp is a really hard place to play and all that. I think that's the thing that's weighing on me the most, but we have a lot to fix, but it's fixable. But we got to start. We got to start now.
And I'll say, for the first time this week, post Alabama, I've heard more intel behind the scenes of kind of some vulnerability in a sense of damn, this hurts. I'm really not enjoying this season. It's not going the way I thought. It hasn't clicked the way I've wanted to, but man, I'm really desperate to get this sorted out. And I do think that there's something like this, the same reason why we love the Indiana win and we loved the St. John's win, because it was you could tell these guys want it, and they're playing with a level of intensity that we just hadn't seen up to this point. And for the first time, I just really hadn't heard a lot of it up to this point, which was part of my frustration, was that they're hurting quite a bit right now. And maybe there's some pointing fingers with trying to find a culprit, trying to put the blame on something or somebody as they try to be just go into scramble mode to sort this thing out, as we saw with the press conferences today. But behind the scenes privately, there's some hurt. There is a level of hey, we really are letting everybody down with our play. This is not who we are. This isn't who we thought we could be. This isn't who we know we can become. So that does give me hope as well, and something that did kind of trend me more in the positive today, especially because I'm telling you, had we done this podcast last night during Pope's call-in radio show, I was losing my freaking mind. I was seeing red and saying, yeah, I'm done. Pope has lost his freaking mind, and there's no path to fixing this. We're talking about Leanne Pope dying in a plane crash and comparing that to rumors of a fight between players before the Louisville game. It's just total nonsense that we were hearing on his call-in show that made me think, okay, he's losing his mind. He's drowning in a way that is just not recoverable. And some of just today, letting the dust settle a little bit, and some of the conversations I've had today suggests that yes, there's a level of struggle. There's if things are not going well, but there are some paths and some avenues here for things to kind of fix themselves. And he's learning. This is a big job that he is used to the BYU approach, and he is learning about how to be the head coach at the University of Kentucky. And this is the first true sign of adversity to the point of like true rock bottom status. And he doesn't really know what climbing out of that looks like quite yet, but he's also absolutely obsessed with getting it right and fixing it and sleepless nights to get to the point of climbing out, building a ladder if he has to climb out of this absolute rock bottom pit. So today I'm glad that I waited 24 hours because it would have been a really, 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 really bad show if we had done it last night. So I'm glad that we remain patient and hopefully feel good to win tomorrow night as a double-digit favorite. Go win by 20. Go, make a statement. Start freaking Jaland Lowe. Go let him eat. Go let Jayden Quaintance eat a little bit and go win a basketball game. Go win an SEC basketball game and make a statement and start giving us more and more reasons to feel good about the long-term success of this team and them figuring it out as a potential, second weekend team. Like let's not get reckless with the Final Four, but like let's inch toward the right direction because I do not want to have any discussions of what does it look like if we lose against Missouri and Mississippi State and worry about missing the tournament. So It starts Wednesday night. Let's just regroup. It was ugly in Tuscaloosa, but there are worse places to be ugly and regroup for a big time win. So let's share a loose score prediction. I got to give an official one tomorrow, but give me a loose score prediction. Knowing with our friends at BetMGM, it's 12.5 going into Wednesday night.
Yeah, I'm going to say we cover. I'm going to say 81-68 is what I'll put it at.
Barely covering. I do like that, though. I'll see the projected score with Ken Palm is 82-73. I'm going 87-72. Yeah, 87-72. I'm going my game MVP. I am picking Cam Williams to be my game MVP. I think he picks up where he left off after a little weird stuff down in Tuscaloosa. Picks up where he left off against Bellarmine. Give me your game MVP.
Yeah, mine is going to be Cam too, because like I said earlier, Missouri gives up a lot of threes, which is good. That's like Cam's time to shine. He's also a bit of a matchup problem, I think, for Mizzou. I'm curious to see how Mizzou will guard him because of his size and his rebounding and all that. And I think he can kind of match up on a couple different guys from Mizzou to cause some problems, which is good. So I'm hoping Cam gets a lot of run in this one. But yeah, he'd be my MVP also.
Well, with that, let's wrap up. Get the heck out of here. Spencer, where can fans find your work?
At Spencer_Smith10. Been trying to put more content out, so you guys can follow me there.
I've enjoyed that quite a bit. You've been kind of saying stuff with your chest a little bit, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You can find me on Twitter as well, at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus Football Intel. Holy crap. I mean, it is just insane over there right now. Will Stein is cooking in the kitchen in ways that Ratatouille would be jealous. So go enjoy what's being cooked over there right now because we're building something special with this football roster. So I've been enjoying that quite a bit in the midst of this kind of weird spell with basketball. So go subscribe there. Make sure you're subscribed right here on the KSR YouTube channel. Make sure you like this page, like this video before you get out of here, and we'll see you to celebrate a big time win over the Missouri Tigers. Go Cats.